Hi there, and welcome to Moving Pictures That Move You. I'm your host, Peter Castor. You'll note that my face is half lit, so there's a key light from my left, your screen right, but there's no fill light and there's no backlight. So in a film, this would often suggest it's an ambiguous characterization that I might be good or bad. In this instance, it just means bad cinematography. So we're going to be on the move a little bit. Today's going to be a bit different. What I'm going to do is set up talking about putting it all together. So this week, of course, we're focusing on sound and on editing, but I also want to address some matters of cinematography and direction. Also, overall film quality, how a film is assessed according to criteria by presumed experts. So our three clips that I'm going to show, extensive 2 minutes plus of some key films. And then what I'm going to do is sort of set up each one, introducing it, and then over in voiceover, I'm going to talk over each film, the way that in class I would screen a clip and speak over each film to draw your attention to specific aspects, in this case of sound, editing, direction, cinematography. So our three films are going to span from 1960 to 2015. From 1960, we're going to look at a clip of Psycho. Last week, we looked at this clip as well. And we are also going to look at 1979, Francis Ford Coppola's Apocalypse Now, the opening sequence. And then we're going to take a look at George Miller's 2015 Mad Max Fury Road. Now, these are three distinct films of extreme significant cultural importance. They've been tremendously influential, or they are in the case of the 2015 film, they are the result of a set of concerns regarding action films, cinematography, resistance to CGI, and emphasis on practical effects. It's also rebooting a decades-old franchise. So, we're going to start off with Psycho. We attended to this scene previously. What I'd like you to really focus on is the relationship of sound and editing. Okay, let's take a look.
Alfred Hitchcock directed Psycho in 1960. The film was nominated for Best Direction, Best Supporting Actress for Janet Leigh, Cinematography Black and White, and Art Direction Black and White. At this point in the film, Marion Crane has decided not to embezzle funds from her job, and she's going to return the money. She's taking a shower to absolve herself of that sin. Here, the camera and the editing invite us to identify. We see her, and then we see from her point of view, the shower. The film was shot in black and white, not because color was unavailable. In 1960, roughly half films were shot in black and white, half in color. And Alfred Hitchcock previously had shot thrillers in color. However, given the subject matter of the film, the studio did not support it in terms of budget, and so he shot the film with his black and white TV crew. Now here we see a distinction between suspense and surprise. Here, in suspense, Alfred Hitchcock is the master of suspense. We see the threat, but the character does not.
Close enough. I think we're on
Surprise would be if the character sees what we see. Now here, pay attention to the sound. That effectively Bernard Herrmann's score of those strings is a stabbing sound, and this rapid-fire sequence of shot, cut, shot, cut, shot, cut. We see the knife, we see the face, we see the knife, we see the skin, we see the knife, we see the face, we see the blood in the water. We see the knife, we see the skin, we see the blood in the water. We never actually see the explicit violence that we would see in a contemporary rated R violent horror film, but through the violence happening in the cut, and that skillful rapid-fire editing makes us seem as if we are actually seeing the violence that happens. Now here notice this much longer take, this lingering shot that tracks down so we can follow Marion Crane as her body slides down. The hand reaches out, the camera tracks backward. We cut to this very blurry shot of her hand. This is almost a mime screen. It's a shot reminiscent of the opening of Cargo. She collapses. We get the return shot to the shower. We watch her blood flow, and here the explicit and implicit meaning is the same. Her life is draining out of her and headed down the drain. The camera tracks in an extreme close-up of the water flowing down the drain, and then we have a match cut, in this instance a cross dissolve to her eye, now lifeless and unseeing. Alright, Apocalypse Now won Academy Awards for Best Cinematography and Best Sound. It was nominated for Best Picture, Best Actor in a Supporting Role, Best Director, Best Writing, Screenplay Adaptation, Best Art Direction, and Best Film Editing. Note the overlap between the awards for which Apocalypse Now is nominated, as well as those of Psycho. Now, in this opening sequence, we fade up from black with no title cards. We see a jungle, we see yellow fog rising. We hear, very quietly at first, a repetitive sound with a Doppler effect. The fog obscures the jungle. It's a long, slow take, dividing rule of thirds, so matter on the screen is not right in the middle, but divided by 3, rather than into a grid of 4. It's a grid of 9. Here there's the emphasis on the horizon, the foreground, the midground of the trees, and the background, and then everything erupts in flames, and we get a slow track to the right. And we now recognize that repetitive whirring sound was helicopter blades, the rotors. The shot fades largely to black as we have black smoke in the background, the yellow fog in the foreground. We're tracking slowly to the right. There's helicopters crisscrossing in the midground. The helicopters are from the Philippine Army. The film was shot in the Philippines. Now we have a superimposition, Martin Sheen's character fading in from black, inverted on the left side of the screen. So instead of a cut, we're seeing simultaneous images. Now we have a third image. We have the blades of a ceiling fan in the foreground, superimposed over Martin Sheen's face, which is itself superimposed over the jungle, but the jungle now moves to the foreground. Now we have this sort of decrease in opacity of Martin Sheen's face as he brings a cigarette to his lips. We're emphasizing the jungle. The explicit meaning is there are 2 images simultaneously in different spaces, but shown at the same time, now 3 with the idol on the right. The implicit meaning, of course, is the jungle in Martin Sheen, or is Martin Sheen's character in the jungle? Next we have Mad Max Fury Road. This film won Academy Awards for Best Achievement in Film Editing, Costume Design, Makeup, Sound Mixing, Sound Editing, Production Design. It was also nominated for Best Picture, Directing, Cinematography, and Visual Effects. Now we're going to see straight cutting here, none of the superimposition or even cross dissolves. Well, there's one cross dissolve, but I've introduced it in order to get us from one sequence of the film to another. And it's cutting for action. Rapid fire cutting, similar to the action sequence in Psycho. We're also going to have a sense in which the score is sort of rising in intensity and increasing in pace, even as the shots go briefer and briefer and briefer. We've got lingering, longer takes of main characters' faces. Here, we have again that mind screen. We're seeing what Max is seeing, a quick flashback to a ghost child he failed to save. You see the teamwork enacted between Tom Hardy's character Max and Charlize Theron's Furiosa. And here, an action sequence that plays almost like a horror film with the conventional chainsaw. Max saved. Now we shift a little further in the action sequence. What's important here is these are all practical effects. All of these automobiles were actually constructed as often combining multiple vehicles. And here, there are actual flamethrowers. I'm really hoping that was a dummy. Lingering on a character's face in a close-up, cuts to the extreme long shots. Again, the interplay of glances between characters as we get shot, reverse shot to emphasize their identification with one another. The visual spectacle of the flames, and then he's immediately captured. And again, we have a practical effect. Now, similar to Apocalypse Now, these flames are real. For the burning of the jungle effect, Francis Ford Coppola actually poured thousands of gallons of gasoline and burned down a section of the Philippine jungle. Now, this gives you a sense of what editing looks like, at least in a digital environment. Now, historically, when editing actual film, editors would literally look at each shot, a sequence of frames on a strip of 35mm film, and determining which shot was to be used, possibly at the direction of the director, they would then trim the beginning and end of each shot and then match it to the following shot and then literally melt those two pieces of celluloid together. Obviously, that reduces the opportunities for, say, accidents. So in a digital environment, this is what we're looking at. What we have here are 4 tracks. Here's track 1. This is audio for the film clips. Here is track 2. This is video for the film clips. Here's track 3. This is my video with narration, and then my narration of Psycho. Now up here on track 4, and then dangling here down in track 3, these are the title cards introducing the name of director and name of film. So this gives you a sense of the multiple tracks. Now, here the tracks don't distinguish between audio and video, but think of how many tracks would need to be in place for Apocalypse Now, when there's 3 separate videos simultaneously visible, because instead of cutting, they're superimposed on one another. All 3 of those video tracks would be visible with opacity reduced so that one could see through one track to see the next video track. Then there would be the multiple audio tracks, the soundtrack with the doors, the end, as well as the recorded sound. Now, for a conventional film shot these days, there would be multiple tracks, one for each Foley sound as well as the natural sound, as well as, in most instances, except in the case of cross dissolves, a single track for video. So we can sort of look through as I scroll the cursor along here. It moves then from that opening narration to Psycho. Now we can zip forward, and we can trim the shots by shortening the beginning or shortening the end. Though again, if we remove frames from within the middle of the shot, that's when we end up with a jump cut, as we see a near version thereof in Psycho.
All right, I hope that sequence of film clips was valuable and gave you a sense as to what changes and what stays the same over time as techniques develop in film pre-production, production, and post-production, and also how cultural mores change, allowing for more explicit violence, for example, across these 3 films. Also, I'd like you to note that, especially with Apocalypse Now and Mad Max Fury Road, both nominated for Best Picture and both nominated for or winning sound and editing. Oftentimes we assume that what makes a picture great is the acting, the writing, the directing, and yet since 1980, among the strongest predictors for films nominated for and winning Best Picture are films that are nominated for and winning Best Sound and Editing. When we hear strong dialogue, we think it's good writing. When we see strong acting, we say that's great acting. Directing is a little trickier, and it's especially deeply implicated with editors, as directors will often work with the same editor film after film. But it's sound and editing, the things we may not know that we notice, and yet they're part of what makes the film great. So also sound and editing I assigned to the same week because they're both about pace, how to build the pace of a film, faster or slower. All right, that's enough for today. I hope you've had fun, and I will see you next week.